Hello everyone, this is Manju Devadas from Pluto7 and I'm thrilled to be your host today. We are passionate about using machine learning, ML, generative AI, large language model to drive data-driven transformations. But today, we are not alone in this exciting journey. We have got a partner and a pioneer in molecular diagnostics from DxTerity and the man behind its strategy, platform, and clinical operation, Jim Healy, is with us. Jim, it's fantastic to have you with us today.
Great to be with you, Manju, today. Amazing times we're living in. The last 90 days have certainly been a hectic time, but truly transformational opportunities are being revealed as we speak. I'm excited to see these benefits and their applications across the healthcare spectrum and the positive impacts that they can have on patient care. I think this technology will be truly liberating for physicians to practice more fully their passion of care. You know, my personal journey in the healthcare information side of the world began with the introduction to a Caltech chemist and molecular biologist, a guy named Bob Tubergen. We met on the volleyball courts of Manhattan Beach, and over a cup of coffee and a glass of wine, we began to conceptualize DxTerity. At that time, we believed firmly in the impact of RNA diagnostics would revolutionize how we manage care, and particularly in the area of immune-mediated diseases. Key to that vision was the ability to bring precision medicine to the home. Thanks to the pandemic, this has been put in light speed mode, and DxTerity's been very busy in the last few years innovating in this category.
That's great to hear how your journey started, Jim. The healthcare industry is known to be one of the most complex fields with myriad challenges. Could you break down for us some of the specific issues you have faced in the area, such as supply chain management, manufacturing, marketing, sales, or diagnostics? How have these challenges influenced DxTerity's strategic decisions?
Healthcare is challenging in so many ways. Bringing medical devices and new therapies to market is a high-risk business, not for the faint of heart. Increasingly, the emergence of precision medicine has improved the ability to more specifically identify healthcare issues, very exciting time, and to manage care and delivery of therapies to help improve patients' quality of life. While this has happened more slowly than all of us would like, I think the breakthroughs in identifying disease and treatments are starting to compound. And with ML and generative AI, we are increasingly able to manage this complexity. You know, if you're a Trekkie, the old tricorder that Malloy deployed is now not so much sci-fi anymore. Seems like it's getting a lot closer. But let's unpack this a bit. One of the key challenges in this global industry is the long timelines and phasing associated with product development and commercialization. From ideation to realized product, the medical industry relies on the real-world knowledge of actual patients, ultimately data at the core of this process. So it seems obvious to me that this supply chain of events from ideation through evidence needs a more holistic view, needs to be complete in its embracing of the foundations of knowledge that create the products. In early phasing, generating small lots and experimental volumes and prototypes emerges. As a startup, DxTerity had to find unique manufacturing of custom oligonucleotides, preservation buffers, device molds, unique packaging, sterilization challenges. The list goes on. The availability of these capabilities quickly forces you into global supply chains because of the scarcity of some of these tools, especially at smaller volumes. We immediately had to become a global company at DxTerity, even though we were just a tiny company at that time. You can see the same trend in the pharmaceutical landscape as the manufacture of drugs, once the domain of single large integrated companies, has now emerged a complex landscape of manufacturing precursors, suppliers of finished goods from start to finish, so destructured and delayered. The modern development landscape has allowed new competitors to emerge more quickly, the products to be developed in record speeds. The speed with which you get from idea to data is key to the competitiveness now in this marketplace. Look no further than mRNA therapies and see that remarkable transformation of supply chains before our eyes. A product which reduced vaccine development time from years to several months. What was truly remarkable was then the rapidity with which they gathered large-scale clinical proofs in real patients. I think it took 3 months for the initial clinical studies, and Pfizer put in, I think, something on the order of 50,000 patient responses. This is a remarkable amount of information to be processed with a new novel application. Truly, truly amazing. But what this forces you to think about is you now need to compete upstream in these early partnerships. You need to establish IP and capabilities long before you know feasibility of a product's been established. So low rate, nimble, yet highly complex supply chains are critical to this timeline and stage of development. So it stands to reason that knowledge and execution and data feedback is a basic building block of this industry. The next phase, once you have a product, now you need to be able to collect evidence. So to me, the real challenge of medical devices is I can't just start advertising my new product. I need to go collect evidence, prove it works before I can actually talk to patients about it. So building that evidentiary to support the products in their intended uses is now a whole layer, a whole order of magnitude of complexity that in a normal product development life cycle you don't engage. So you've made it through this initial product development stage, but now the fun begins. You need to now begin collecting clinical evidence to support the products and its intended use. This requires you to move from an event-based philosophy or a milestone philosophy to a knowledge continuum that grows and evolves. This part of the supply chain, data and evidence, gets even more challenging. The expansive nature of reaching patient populations in multiple countries with common disease staging and treatments necessary to gather statistical validity. So the next stage of your product development journey, now that you have a product, is to begin collecting clinical evidence to support its intended use. I say begin because it requires you to move from this event-based project management milestone to a knowledge continuum that grows and evolves. This part of the supply chain, data and evidence, gets even more challenging when you consider the nature of reaching patient populations in multiple countries with common disease staging and the treatments necessary to gather statistical validity. The framing of what problem you're going to solve for a patient becomes tantamount. I kind of liken this to prompt engineering, as if you don't ask the right question, you're not going to get the right answer. Reach too far in your claims, you get denied. Not far enough, and you have no market with which to gain a return on investment. And don't forget, in this product space, you can't actually market your claims in any way ahead of the evidence, or you get shut down by the regulators. So this makes it a very, very difficult market to get out and actually incent people to join. I think it's true of a lot of Silicon Valley startups that were going to change the world quickly in healthcare. They took a regulatory beating to comply. Think about Theranos and that whole story. I want to emphasize the word begin gathering evidence. The new evidence often brings new insights. These insights take the form of diverse patient biologies and different conditions. Your initial product ideas now look like fantasies compared to the reality of diversity in patients. The journey and validation of diagnostics proceeds to address the nuances of disease in differing patient populations. Add to this the complete patient journey. Outcomes that can span decades of life necessary to establish those utilities and the economic health benefits associated with them. When I said not for the faint of heart, I meant it. So in the world of building a diagnostics company, this is what brings your Metafair teams front and center, because you're constantly challenged to understand unexpected outcomes and expanded utilities. So often the singular diagnostic grail that you began with is now a new series of evidence and new submissions and new pathways that have to be proven. Now think about all the product pedigree issues associated with that. Lots, serials, instructions given to patients, instructions given to providers, and finally patients themselves. Now track an adverse reaction or admit a misdiagnosis, real consequences. This is all part of the supply chain of medical diagnostics.
Jim, it was fascinating how you laid out the whole journey all the way from start to finish, bringing what happens in the physical world with how that transforms what happens, the events from plan, make, source, ship, the patient experience, and then bring the information back for analysis and decision making. And more importantly, how the information, knowledge, and data are intertwined with the physical events in motion in the real world. Many times, when customers think about a data transformation or a AI transformation, it's seen as an isolated activity or a task, and it's not, right? And that's more evident
Yeah,
in
I couldn't agree more.
it out. Yeah,
It's a continuum. I really think, and I think, AI is a true gift in this area because the immensity of the data sensors, if you will, the data evidence that you can gather is orders of magnitude more complex. And the speed with which you're trying to do that, it makes it almost impossible to do with pure human eyes. Can't just watch it anymore. So I really believe this is an area where AI can dramatically improve the operational effectiveness of companies if applied right, looking at the problem holistically across the spectrum.
agree. And we're seeing some evidences of this increase month over month as the broader market understands the transformational effect of data, AI, and everything put together. Thank you. Now let's moving on to the next question. So evidence and delivery of data has been key to DxTerity's innovation. Now let's dive a bit deeper into DxTerity's journey with data-driven innovation. Jim, could you tell us about the point at which DxTerity realized the need to unify data? For our audience who may not be familiar with the concept, could you also explain what it means to unify data and how it works in practice?
Well, the journey that DxTerity was for me, it was all about this unfolding of data and information over time. I liken back to the initial days in DxTerity's formation when I got a call from Dr. Terbergen about 2 a.m. He was by himself in the lab in Rancho Dominguez, aka Compton. And he wanted to share that the chemistry, non-enzymatic direct targeting of RNA actually worked. He didn't have anybody to talk to. He figured it out by himself in the lab. And the visual of him dancing around the lab with thoughts of taking over the world kind of still rings in my head. I would say the first realization after getting through the euphoria of, hey, it works, was how do we actually prove the utility of this invention? We thought we could just get 100 patients and go figure out how to apply it and be off to the races. But I think one of the first data recognitions was, okay, this is different. RNA is different than DNA. It is more oriented to dynamic changes in biology. So think about a state diagram versus a sine wave. DNA is largely a state diagram. RNA, largely a sine wave that oscillates up and down. So the quick Jeopardy answer for this challenge or conundrum is it requires saturation of a signal, aka more data points to resolve. So really, it's an order of magnitude more difficult than DNA in that you now have to have multiple patient data points to be able to intersect the change in state that you're looking at. So part of the journey of the joy of diagnostics company is, wow, what do I focus on? I could sequence now from a fingerstick device and gather 20,000 biomarkers. Okay, wait, I have to actually prove that first. So we went off to Pfizer and Janssen and pitched the idea that we could do fingerstick collected RNA samples, and they put us through the mill in proving that. So we went through a whole period of proving sample preservation and delivery through US mail. This was not trivial, but eventually we became very good at it, and that information was then published by Janssen, which was a very seminal moment in the evolution of DxTerity. But sequencing is too expensive to do at this scale. So we had to seek a chemistry where we could apply it very cost effectively. We chose capillary electrophoresis, $2 versus $1,000 a run. As a business guy, I thought, yeah, probably better to do multi-time points affordably. So we knew we could reliably pull RNA and DNA from a blood sample at ambient temperature. Now we had that proof. So we charged back up Pharma Hill to take our ideas and see where we could go. RNA, different story than DNA. Decays rapidly. Cold chain makes for from home unaffordable. So now we knew we could reliably pull RNA and DNA from a blood sample at ambient temperature from the US mail. What could we do with this? And at the time, 23andMe was just booming in terms of DNA and sequencing people. So we thought, RNA, same story. So we charged back up Pharma Hill with our ideas and looked at it from RNA perspective, because up till then, RNA had been a different story than DNA because it decays naturally, rapidly. Cold chain would make from-home diagnostics unaffordable, so we had to show sample stability over time. But it was also a question of how to apply this. Where does a low-cost from-home capability make the most sense in gene expression? Well, we kept pitching ideas, and the pharma feedback that came back is, hey, why don't you guys take a look at lupus? It has confounded all DNA approaches, and they need something like this. So we said, yes, sir, and we began looking at how to do that. So the next step was to look at clinical trials in lupus. We priced doing traditional clinical trials and came up with numbers that exceeded $5 million to recruit patients. And as the business side of the equation, we don't have that kind of money. So how are we going to do this more effectively? Scarcity is the mother of invention, I always say. We came across a publication that a guy at Quest had done, a guy named John Reitz. He did 1,000 RA patients in 6 weeks. And we thought, that's it. We went to John and asked him to give us a price on that from Quest. Multi-million-dollar price point, still too high. But I think that was the beginning of the innovation of how to modify the evidence gathering supply chain. John is now the CEO of a company called Thread, and he's one of the key inventors of direct-to-patient technology platforms. So these created some very interesting evidence journeys in order to bring a product to market.
This is all very interesting, Jim. With such a significant shift in your approach, where there must have been concerns and roadblocks, can you share what those were?
So to meet this challenge, we conceived of the need for a clinical grade digital platform with mobile apps that could manage patient recruitment, clinical interrogation, medical records ingestion, sample delivery, and processing. Not a simple gathering of problems when you consider HIPAA compliance, high-tech security, SOC 2, etc. So along that pathway, we were introduced to a gentleman by the name of Jay Remley, an ex-Googler, whose wife was affected by lupus. He introduced us to the Google Health team, a gal named Shweta Manair, and Pluto7, Manju. That's when we met, if you recall. But from there, together, we conceived and delivered a platform leveraging open source tools and the emerging fire ingestion technology from Google. We coupled that with our laboratory systems and our clinical platforms to be able to deliver results in record time. Fast forward, Celgene came along and bought Receptos in the middle of this. Greg then introduced us to Sarah Hershey, who was their head of global biomarkers. She quickly gravitated to the idea as well and challenged us to build a quick direct-to-patient study in lupus right then and there. We pushed through our prototype in record time, and with Pluto7's help and Google, we began marketing campaigns and ran Facebook ads. So boom, 1,400 patients in 6 weeks, and we delivered back full RNA profiles of all 1,400 in week 7. Needless to say, we blew away our biopharma partners with our efficiency and our speed. We were able to do it in such a compressed time frame, and we also unveiled that the normalized biomarkers that were indicative of lupus in this stage were evident in this population. This was truly groundbreaking. So I will call this development supply chain, and it marks a clear example of the power that new methods and holistic approaches can bring to scale understanding and market development of medical products.
Wow. Such a big impact of 1,400 patients with 1 week turnaround. I'm sure your ecosystem loved it, especially stitching all the pieces of the puzzle together for them, including the data capabilities, to be able to deliver such outcomes quickly. So, Jim, for a transformation like what you just went through, a critical part of such a transformation is stakeholder buy-in. Could you walk us through how you got your stakeholders onboarded with this idea? What was their initial reaction, and how did you manage to align them with this new data-driven vision?
Well, I think the absolute best example from the DxTerity experience was our partners and how they interpreted it. My hat's off to Sarah Hershey, who now runs the global diagnostics for Bristol Myers Squibb, for understanding the difficulty of validating and commercializing diagnostics, which are sorely needed in precision medicine. She foresaw the need to unify the industry around RNA diagnostics for this technology to gain ground. Well, I think the absolute best example in the DxTerity experience involved our partners. My hat is off to Sarah Hershey, who now runs the global diagnostics for Bristol Myers Squibb, for understanding the difficulty of validating and commercializing diagnostics, which are sorely needed in precision medicine. She foresaw the need to unify the industry around these diagnostics, which are novel and still are today. Early on, she worked to help us unify that through a pre-competitive consortium consisting of 6 global biopharma partners. She helped form this and helped us evolve RNA diagnostics in lupus, which was truly groundbreaking. This endorsement and financial pooling of resources we were enabled without needing VC money. This made the alignment problems much easier. The market aligned us. We just followed instincts from there that led us to Patients Group. And this is where the rubber meets the road. The Lupus Research Alliance, probably the most significant in that disease vertical, just created a program that they call Lupus Nexus. This is the largest prospective study in lupus to date. We will be profiling 3,500 patients over multiple time points to unlock RNA-based diagnostics. We are so excited to be part of this.
This is fascinating. Now, let's talk about the impact and value. What has been the impact of the data-driven approach on DxTerity's operations? And how quickly did you see the value, the return on investment? Could you also share any tangible results or key metrics that highlight the impact of these technologies on DxTerity's operations, both in terms of whether it's short-term or long-term?
The evolution of medical devices and therapeutics is not often a straight line. All the work we did in direct-to-patient clinical trials supporting our research efforts came to a screeching halt with COVID. Turns out nobody wanted to give immunotherapies experimentally during a pandemic for good reason. Fortuitously, our platform and data work applied directly to selling COVID testing and RNA tests done remotely. We did a 2-month clinical trial in record time, presented that data to the FDA. We were actually the first ones to gain unsupervised delivery of COVID tests, which further enabled us to sell on Amazon directly to consumers, as well as provide workplace testing to over 100 biopharmaceutical companies. This effort prepared us well for a crazy fast cycle time in the pandemic. Everything was compressed. But interestingly, the data ecosystem around that required us to deliver results back to public health. A lot of the demographic information required, and it also required us to deliver back data to employers so they can actionably manage their workplace health. This was an amazing time. I guess other important facts or KPIs, we managed that 24-hour turnaround time with 99.5% accuracy. So really quite a remarkable supply chain to be able to manage real time the turnaround of these tests. It also meant 50 million of revenue to us, which was also not a bad outcome. But beyond that, the enterprise value of DxTerity lies in its ability to address complex immune diseases from home. We have taken just a few steps in this journey, but the dream of precision medicine from home has never been so close. My head explodes when I start thinking about feeding AI and clinical practice results into a common engine and to be able to use this in a decision process.
What a truly remarkable innovation during extraordinary times in our lives, COVID, where not only you had to change your business direction, but also innovate quickly and put it in the hands of the patients and the customers who needed it. It's amazing the agility that DxTerity was able to not only demonstrate that kind of an agility, but also make a business impact and grow the business. But more importantly, your last comment is even more intriguing. With all the decades of experience that you bring, you are also seeing the power of whether it's AI, generative AI, and you're seeing the potential. And like you mentioned, I can only imagine your imagination going to the next level in terms of leveraging these capabilities. Now let's shift gears and explore the role of emerging technologies in DxTerity's operations. How has your organization incorporated, whether it's machine learning, artificial intelligence, generative AI, or large language models into your existing workflows, or are considering it? What specific applications have you found, or do you think would be most impacted with the adoption of these capabilities? And also why?
Applying AI and ML has long been a dream in the genomics space. We've been using machine learning tools for some time now, and they've produced valuable insights, algorithms, and proven invaluable in data reduction tasks and deciphering biomarker patterns, all of this largely in the domain of applied science. I think more challenging things have emerged when you start looking at natural language processing applications, because if you've dealt with medical records in your experience, you realize that all medical records are not created equal, that there's many anomalies as written or recorded in the curation of medical records. Normalizing terms, normalizing definitions, being able to get at the foundations of data accuracy to improve our observation is tantamount. We are eyeing these LLMs in this space as a critical qualitative tool to be able to improve medical record interpretation. And I think this is truly where the quality of inputs will be improved by the application of these large language models. So those are the main sort of operational functions we have seen in AI, all of them fairly rudimentary, seeming in the latest rounds of innovation, but things have to begin with small stepping stones. Like many of you, with the availability of the likes of Bard and ChatGPT, we've all been playing with the technology, which is remarkable. I took to writing a business plan a couple months back. I was startled at the ease with which it addressed certain areas of the plan, how I could change the tone of my responses, and how I could seek data supported in tables to test certain aspects or to present certain ideas. When I attempted to clarify further the scientific footing, you could start to see the holes in what's available today. While compelling and of first order value, they lacked clarity and did not pick up on many of the important nuances that an experienced researcher or physician would see in the data. This is not surprising given the training data available is largely public, is summarized or interpreted with bias. I think data inputs remains collectively the single most large challenging area, the domain of knowledge which is not publicly available. I would estimate that about 30% known by public sources is actually available to these large language models today, of which some percentage is speculation and opinion rather than facts. Leaves you with the key to the next wave of solutions. You recognize this when dealing in biopharma, where the crown jewels are often hidden in the clinical data collected and control groups that are used to measure them. This data is the domain of privacy and competitiveness. Investment and innovation intrinsically defined by this data and insight is not openly shared. Further, it is plagued by the lack of portability in health information and imperfect data collection. Anyone who's attempted to reproduce NGS sequencing runs knows that the noise factors introduced are often distorting of the data. This is why GMP is so important in this industry. At DxTerity, we've been experimenting in health-based chat platforms that have been fed high-quality clinical data as it's learning. The results are pretty amazing. This technology is making the once robotic chat and frustrating phone answering systems way more productive. But guardrails in the medical industry are pretty high here. And remember, do no harm.
I agree with you on that, Jim. Guardrails. We all need those guardrails. And with all the accuracies that we are seeing, yes, it's pretty good to get these LLM models give us reasonable answers, but in healthcare, reasonable is not good enough. Thank you. Now let's talk about the broader healthcare and pharma industry. How do you see generative AI, LLM, shaping the industry's future? In your opinion, what should companies be doing today or prepare for the future?
Well, I can't claim to be an expert in all of these areas, but I am truly amazed. I mean, on the patient-facing side, I'm amazed at what these avatars can do. Probably a lot better to talk to than a chat box. Also, maybe provide some companionship to those who might be lonely or need somebody to talk to, and they're going to be a lot more patient than a customer representative. The other one that I think on the patient side that's near term, I mean, these I think are the things that are most near term in my mind. Physician assistants, products that emerge from the MedPalm initiative at Google, which leverage the established volumes of clinical knowledge and puts them in a consumable form for physicians as a true force multiplier for overworked doctors. This is exciting to think about for hospitals in terms of quality of outcomes. I think notably, Tempus just announced their digital assistant for navigating genomics in oncology that is pretty interesting. 150 petabytes of oncology data and medical records at your fingertips. Watch this space. On the industry side, I think AI and generative models can fundamentally alter the cost of development and delivery of products. On the industry side, I think that generative AI can fundamentally alter the cost of development and delivery of products. I think 4 things come to mind. One is efficiency in meeting demand, more precise models of customers and buying behaviors, allowing higher efficiency in supply chain, reducing waste and spoilage in this area, reacting to changes in the marketplace where you're not missing demand equations. Think of CRM on steroids. Another area that I think is tremendously ripe for innovation using AI is in processing medical record claims. How many of us are perplexed by medical billing? We should be able to eliminate 20 to 30% of the overhead of these claims through AI. Can we spend more on care and less on paper, please? A third area is what I would describe as development targeting. I think things like Vertex modeling on protein structures can provide tremendous value in successful development strategies. I would say more successful phase 3 trials, please. Have we centered our designs well enough to survive a phase 3 trial? This is where billions are wasted. When you think about idea generation, IP as a supply chain, training massive data sets to be predictive of emerging invention is a huge opportunity. Still a gap there in terms of the timeliness of that information, but that is an amazing thought to be able to fine-tune and optimize the development of intellectual property. In the development domain as well, complete modeling of what a normal human being looks like genomically, I think, is at our fingertips. Essentially digital twins for humans, where I can compare a diseased person or person suffering from disease to a normal. This would go to great lengths in helping us discover more anomalies in the generation of disease. And I think a fourth area is data interpretation. It's already showing huge value in imaging. The AIs are now able to scan images and see things that average physicians miss. Now, if I could get enough understanding of patients' gene expression relative to disease onset and flares, that's game changer. So along the domain of autoimmune diseases, being able to predict when somebody's disease is emerging and be able to intersect those destructive episodes is truly game changing. There's companies like Datavant out there that I think are key to breaking down the barriers to large scale clinical data. So much trial data and patient data are repeated because they're locked up and not shared. Can we do this in a way that protects privacy, but yet allows the insights that are available in that data to be shared on a broader set of researchers and clinicians? Feeding this data into LLMs is going to be an exciting area to watch. I think the Tempest example portends a much bigger future here. You know, when you ask me the question about preparing for the future, I guess my own personal mindset is keep experimenting. Look for opportunities to leverage LLMs with proprietary data. This will lead to gains in market advantage. I do think eyes of the beholder, that the more people that see things, the more things that are seen. I mean, when you look at initiatives like Hugging Face and GitHub, they are providing tremendous playgrounds for the curious and really have leveled the playground across the globe. Anyone can access these technologies and bring them to bear. Like the advance of the PC and mobile apps, we need to visualize generative AI as something which can expand our knowledge over time to allow for further insight. Can I talk with patients more, with better data, and be more confident that I have exhausted the possibilities that I should be thinking about in their care? We have a long way to go to realize these dreams. Don't get me wrong, the thought of massive disruption of jobs is real. But I do think there's a very positive story that can unfold from this powerful technology.
Jim, the way you laid out the impact of the industry, whether at different stages or different functions, and how we should be looking at these capabilities, whether it's AI, data, generative AI, with the PC and mobile app analogy that you gave. And the last comment, especially, is that there's a massive disruption for jobs, and it's real. But looking at it always from a positive angle, there has been massive disruptions in the past, but as human evolution, we always evolve for the positive side over a period of time. And this is part of the natural human evolution. This one in the technology spectrum seems to be a bigger scale than what we have seen before. Now, moving on to the next question. You highlighted a lot of very insightful experiences, thoughts, and your perspectives. And those were some very key insights for our audience. Jim, now transitioning to the talent side of things, how important is it to have a team that is capable of leveraging these technologies? What has DxTerity's approach been in ensuring your team has the necessary skills?
Yikes, I need to figure this out. I think if I were to tell you that I had this figured out, I'd be lying. Honestly, it's not hard to be overwhelmed by what's happened this year. But ultimately, I view this as a force multiplier. I have a very bright young Stanford bioinformatician on board who's quite good at Python programming and the like. And I asked him what he thought of it all. He said that he's probably 70% more productive in using the tools to generate certain blocks of code, which were root for him to generate, but he still would have to handwrite them. In the scripting and curation of data on the scientist side, I would guess that about 70% of our time, even today, is spent curating data and aligning data so that it all makes sense. If that could be done ahead of time, imagine the productivity recapture that we could have in those scientists focusing their knowledge on insight rather than on organization. If you were to ask me what skills that I gravitate towards in a candidate or in someone in this field, I look at cross-disciplinary knowledge. Fundamentally, can they demonstrate judgment across disciplines? The other attribute I think that's most valuable now is curiosity. You know, if you're a prompt engineer, you got to just be curious to ask questions, asking the right questions. Understanding the limitations of the technology and data is also valuable because that helps steer how you might ask a question. Recently, I read a book called Mathematical Intelligence. This is from a guy named Junaid Mubin of Oxford. He does a great job of chronicling the development of mathematical knowledge from astronomy to calculus to applications of LLMs to games like chess and Go to taking advanced tests in this rules-based world. His opening quote struck me. At MIT in 1950, Marvin Minsky, who was a seminary person, proclaimed, "We are going to make machines intelligent. We're going to make them conscious." To which his partner, Douglas Engelhart, a peer, "You're going to do all that for machines? What are you going to do for the people?" That quote resonates in my mind, and especially as it relates to the healthcare industry. What are we going to do for people? I'm optimistic here, and I resonate with Mubin's assessment, is that what is unique to humans is that ability to provide analogy at a high conceptual level, to summarize and estimate in the absence of facts, and to correlate with other seemingly unrelated facts, and then to express them with empathy and understanding. I hope that that's the future. So in the skills world, I'm looking to promote the curious and the creative, those who are a nuisance in asking too many questions, those who can see and bring to fruition the good that can come from this disruption, not just disruption.
Absolutely. Talent is a critical piece of the puzzle here. So finally, Jim, could you please share any key lessons or takeaways from DxTerity journey that you believe would be of high value to our audience here?
I guess, how would I answer that question? Experiment, encourage exploration, emphasize the positive, battle the divide of have and have-nots. I guess from a practical sphere, focus on problems not easily automated, things that would be complemented by machine learning, eliminate the routine, play to human strengths. I guess one area in particular is insurance payments delays should not be enhanced. I guess in total, I believe AI can fundamentally achieve more affordable, more accessible, and more accurate conclusions. These are all human goals we should seek to share.
Yeah, I agree with you. We do not want insurance payments to be further delayed by leveraging AI. Thanks for highlighting that. Jim, your insights today have been incredibly valuable. I'm sure that our audience will take away a great deal of your experience navigating through the complexities of the pharmaceutical industries, the importance of a data driven approach, and the transformative power of technologies like generative AI, machine learning, and more. On behalf of Pluto7, I want to thank you for your time and for sharing your wisdom with us today.
Well, thank you, Manju, for the opportunity. And thank you for the game-changing contributions your team made with DxTerity. I think you sit at a very interesting point in the crossroads of ideas to delivery, intelligent supply chains. Thanks.
So, Jim, it's always been a joint journey. Everything that we have been able to contribute is because of the amazing team that you have at DxTerity and your own vision. It always takes a visionary to step out there, make a statement, and make that statement a reality. And to our audience, thank you for joining us. If this conversation sparked ideas about how you might leverage generative AI, machine learning, or data platforms in your organization, remember that we at Pluto7 are here to help you navigate through that journey. Reach out to me, Manju Devadas, on LinkedIn, or send me a note. Until then, stay innovating, stay inspired, and thank you, Jim, for joining us.
Thank you, Manju.